What wedding moment made you think, they are not going to last long? As a wedding photographer, I have been to more than my share of weddings. It was a real shotgun wedding. Dad didn't realize it would not stand up in court. Only time the groom was more excited to have photos than the bride. She wanted a limo, he thought a hearse would be better and kept doing lurch impressions. From the Addams family. Her friends took turns motorboating her, females, and he said, "Get it out of your system, as after tonight you never get to do that again." Was a good sign also when she dove into the pool with her bridesmaids at the reception, in her wedding dress. Don't know what happened. Sat down with bride and groom, filling out the contract. Got the deposit. He stood up, said forget it, and walked out. 2 months later I get told the wedding is off. 3 months later she calls to rebook, different groom. Day of the wedding I am at the church. Got the final payment the week before. No one shows. No one, just me and the DJ. I've got to. One of my good friends got married and I'd never met her before the wedding because she's just shy. On the wedding day, she was belligerently drunk before the ceremony even started and couldn't even get through the lines she was supposed to repeat, i.e. I promise to love you. She ended up slapping the groom, spilling champagne on her dress, and then crying under a table while he tried to comfort her. They lasted about 4 months. Another one was my wife's friend. She's a very conservative, religious white girl who married a black man. Most of her racist family didn't approve of the marriage and didn't show up. But she planned the whole marriage around race. Like a vanilla cake for her and a chocolate cake for him, the wedding colors were black and white, and even the meals were white meat for her side and dark meat for his. It was extremely uncomfortable as a guest. They lasted 2 years, but broke up because he was abusive and almost killed her, rather than the weird racial tension. Not at the wedding itself, but I used to work at a David's bridal. Bride came in with tons of friends, we did the say yes to the dress thing, and an hour later she's standing there in $3,000 worth of stuff and doesn't have any money with her or in her account. She decides she wants to apply for the store credit card, I run it through the system, and she gets denied. She then calls the groom for his info, which, to be fair, people did all the time, and he tells her no. She threw a huge fit on the phone with him, standing on the bridal stage, literally demanding why not. Why? Why? Like an actual child over and over again. I've never seen a 30-year-old age backwards so quickly. She was just a brat. Literally stomping her feet in front of me, all her friends, and the other bride in the store. I was embarrassed. At the end of all of that, she hangs up on him and her friend is like, "I'm so sorry you can't get your dress," and the bride stops crying instantly and just goes, "Oh, I'll get the dress. I just have to do this at home, and when he gets mad enough he'll come get it for me, so I'll stop." Speechless. Sure enough. Girl came back 2 days later with her man and he applied for the credit card and bought the dress. He was livid and silent, and she was smug as hell. Can't imagine they're having a happy marriage if they are still together. I'm reminded of someone I read about maybe 20 years ago, a college professor who developed a protocol for predicting whether prospective marriages were likely to last. IRC, he had the engaged couple discuss some tender issues, topics they would fight about. They would videotape the session, then research assistants would watch the tape, counting the various interactions of note. That data produced their prediction. His research showed that fighting was not a problem as such, lots of happy long-lasting marriages had lots of fighting. The crucial aspect was whether the couple was mutually respectful during their fight. Observed disrespect was a very strong predictor of a short-lived marriage. I have kept that in mind when dating. If I feel like she seems to be contemptuous of me at any point, that's a massive red flag. I ended a relationship when I realized I was treating her disrespectfully. Be nicer, I would tell myself. After a while I realized that I simply did not respect her, and that was a big problem. In the 1995 BBC Pride and Prejudice, the dad says something like, "I couldn't abide you having a marriage, Lizzie, where you cannot respect your spouse, like my marriage, dot. There are two ex-MRS Lebrowskis. They both broke my heart. I'm permanently sad that I couldn't make either marriage last. I take some joy, though, from the fact that I deeply respected both of them when we got married and still do now, 37 and 15 years later." Not the couple getting married, but the best man and maid of honor who were married to each other. Best man's speech was all about how hard it was to be married. "I've been married for a year and it feels like 100 years. Maid of honor stands up to give a speech and just says ditto. It was so awkward and really brought the whole room down. Brother of the bride stood up and gave a nice impromptu speech about teamwork and having a partner to go through life with. How happy the family was to have the groom join their family. Best man and maid of honor were divorced within a year. Couple who got married are still married 30 plus years later. I sometimes wonder if the speeches actually were helpful in how not to act as a couple. For me, the complex backstory. Bride's brother is gay and has been in a long-term relationship for 40 plus years. At the time he gave his speech about marriage, he couldn't marry the man he loved, and I think his passionate defense of marriage was born from that. When people would say they were against gay marriage because it makes a mockery of marriage, I'd think of that night. The married couple who had no respect for marriage could easily marry, and did over and over again, and the man who stood up and defended marriage could not. He's married now and lovingly takes care of his husband as he battles health issues. This was my sister's best friend and it was a bachelorette party moment. Bride had been having an affair, everyone knew it. The groom's friends tried to tell him, but she convinced him they were making it up. I mean, at that point it was just sad. She actually had the balls to force fiancé to apologize to the guy she was sleeping with for the accusations. The night of the bachelorette party, she actually took all her bridesmaids back to the other guy's house and spent the night with him. He came to their wedding. It was so awkward. Everyone knew and everyone was talking. The groom was told, but chose to overlook it. After the wedding, she insisted the other guy come on vacations with her and her husband and included him in all their social functions. Now, if they're non-monogamous, whatever, go crazy. But her husband was an absolute wreck about it for years and she just kept gaslighting him. No one could convince him to leave her. She told my sister that affair guy insisted he would never marry her and didn't want kids, so she was using fiancé to get them. They ended up divorcing 2 years later after their second child was born. She immediately moved in with affair guy and they did end up getting married. Edit: I wanted to add a little more context since this comment blew up a bit. Everyone involved in this story was really young, except affair guy. He had already been married and divorced and had a few kids of his own by then, but he was still well under 30. The original couple had been together since middle school and all this went down between the ages of 21 to 23. I think the husband was just really naive and invested in the relationship. Small town marry your high school sweetheart and live happily ever after bullshit. Affair guy did not go with them on their honeymoon, but he was included in group vacation plans before and after the wedding. Other people in the friend group did start refusing to go if he was involved. The bride had this really twisted power move that husband was not allowed to disrespect or offend affair guy. Any jealousy or suspicions were his own insecurities, and anyone who said they were sleeping together just didn't understand platonic friendship. Affair guy was just a good friend, her best friend really, and husband needed to get over it. Bride and affair guy are still married and the second child is likely actually his. Groom married a girl they went to high school with and seems content. I was kindly included in a last-minute +1 to the wedding of a family friend who I'd never met before. At the rehearsal dinner, or the German equivalent, the Polterabend, the guests smashed ceramic and porcelain items on the ground. I was fresh in Germany, so this was all pretty out of context and frightening, but my boyfriend explained that it's a tradition, reminding the couple that life is sometimes difficult and you have to work together to clean it up. The bride kind of half-heartedly motioned to the groom to sweep it up. He did a little bit, then just moved on to talk to his friends, leaving most of the shards strewn around the yard. Additionally, I don't think I saw the couple talk to each other once over the next 3 days of celebrations. It was a gorgeous wedding, and I'm so grateful that I was invited. Really good way to begin living in a new country, but it wasn't surprising to hear that they divorced a few years later. I live for these threads. Anyway, I know a photographer who was offered to shoot a wedding on the Gold Coast, Australia. If you're from Australia, then you know the Gold Coast, while beautiful, has a lot of Jersey Shore types living there. It's kind of like Miami but no celebrities and very very trashy. My friend is getting shots of everybody getting dressed up at the same time because the groom, groomsmen, bride, and bridesmaids are all getting ready in the same room. The groom decided to have his bucks party, bachelor, stag do, the night before, so they're all hungover as shit and snorting line after line of coke, something that is making my photographer friend's job hard because she can't get any nice shots of the groom or groomsmen without these illicit drugs in view. The energy in the room is getting uncomfortable, so the bride asks if they could take it easy on the coke and get a couple of nice photos. The groom yells, "Shut up, cunt," and keeps snorting. The girl who got my friend the gig said they divorced like 4 months later. Another friend of mine was pressured into marrying his girlfriend of like 8 years because she dropped an ultimatum: propose to me within a year or we're done. He does, so they get married, but of every wedding photo she posted on Facebook, neither one of them looked happy. They divorced barely a year into their marriage. I just played at a wedding where it was the opposite. Bride and groom had no idea you usually had music at a wedding. I suggested canon because the groom's family wanted super slow worship music and the bride was too afraid to speak up. Then last minute her aunt, the bassist's mom, says to play Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen, and even though it was instrumental, some of the groom's family straight up leaves. Also, once they found out there was going to be music, the groom's family wanted to be the ones playing and singing, but those kids were super raw/amateurs and expectedly backed out once they saw the crowd. Leading to the groom's family trying to pretend they didn't know there would be a band and trying to get my girlfriend, vocalist, and my bassist off the stage. The cherry on top is the pastor marrying them went off on a tangent and said because she was a single mother this relationship was doomed and she damned any future children they'd have, and cursed their relationship because she had sex before marriage. The ceremony was delayed because the bride and groom were on the phone with the groom's mother, who refused to come to the wedding, trying to be talked into still going through with it. Apparently they had a huge and physical fight the night before. Their roommate at the time didn't come either. He told me what he saw in the house the night before was enough for him to know this wedding was doomed and they should not be dating, let alone getting married. Edit: in an attempt to answer some of these questions, first, this was about 20 years ago and we are all in our 40s now and have moved on with life since. So, I don't know why the mother wasn't there. I just remember thinking it was weird when I noticed she wasn't, and then later heard they were on the phone with her. The roommate was visibly angry when I went to pick him up for the wedding. Outright refused to come, and I think ended up moving out and basically disappearing after. He was a big dude who worked as a bouncer at clubs, and my impression was he had to go into work mode the night before in his living room and wasn't happy about it. I never heard details and I wouldn't have felt right asking for them. I am still friends, in the sense that I see them every few years, with both the bride and groom. See my comment below for how they turned out. Happy ending considering. I should also add, the years in which they dated and got married, all of us were very heavy binge drinkers. We were in our 20s and worked service industry jobs. It seemed normal almost for this much drama to be around. Looking back, I don't have the same opinions. No one involved ended up in rehab or prison and all live relatively normal lives now. That sucks for everyone. At least they're free to be happy now. A girl I used to know was attached to me. I'm no catch, so I refrain from using obsessive or stalker type behavior. However, that's kinda what we're dealing with. I rebuffed her advances, nicely as first then fairly harshly later. Eventually I cut contact with her for our own good. I was tired of explaining that while I might find her as a person enjoyable, that doesn't mean I want to fuck her or have a relationship with her. From what her friends and family said, I didn't think she'd be able to move on if I was in her life. At least not as quickly as she should have. Years later I re-established contact with a mutual friend, and I eventually asked about her. Turns out she is a lesbian, and was happily living with a woman. Looking back, it makes sense. She only hung out with ladies or super duper effeminate men. Which by those standards I'm fucking Rambo and Arnold rolled into one. She wasn't all about me, so much as she was all about denying that part of herself for whatever reason. Like I said, I'm no catch myself. Looking back now, it all seems so sad. It's a damned shame she felt like she couldn't be who she really is inside. I'm glad now that she's living her truth. The only good part about a breakup is that both people are now free to find someone that'll love them for them. When she went alone on her honeymoon, because she booked a trip to the Caribbean despite her newlywed husband having a severe sun allergy. Edit, because this kinda blew up and I saw some mean comments about her. She was a good friend and they had been together for some years. They married young and it didn't occur to them that it would be strange if she went on the honeymoon and he stayed behind. He was a good guy and just wanted to see her happy, and she really wanted to go on this vacation, because she had never left the country. They separated half a year after the wedding, and my friend, the bride, told me that the marriage had been a way to prolong the relationship despite both of them knowing that it was already over some time before they got married. Kinda like a couple gets a baby to save a marriage. It really was just sad because they were a nice couple, but they stayed friends after separating. And I can guarantee that she didn't cheated on him while away. They were both really loyal. About his sun allergy, he had red hair, a really fair skin, and burned up within minutes. And I mean really bad sunburn, the kind you have to go to the hospital for. He always had to wear sunglasses, long-armed shirts, and a hat, even on cloudy days, so the vacation was not for him. I was invited to a high school friend's wedding. The night before the wedding, she asked me to join her future husband's bachelor party. He had no friends and it was only he, his brother, his father, and I. They were not thrilled with my presence. They wanted to go to a strip club, but thought I would rat them out. We to a bar, but I could tell I was the turd in the punch bowl, so I went back to the hotel and they went to a strip club. My friend called me after I got back to the hotel. She asked me why I didn't go to the strip club and I told her that it wasn't my thing. She asked if we could hang out and catch up. I said sure, and she came to my room only wearing a robe. It was obvious there was nothing on under it. We watched a movie and she fell asleep. At some point in the night she left. The next morning at the wedding I was sitting next to a mutual friend. This friend was encouraging me to object and looked disappointed when I didn't do it. They lasted 5 years, but lived together less than 2. Friend's wedding back in 2016, somewhat nice affair for us given we were in our early 20s and all. I was a bridesmaid and really hadn't met the groom much prior. He was nice but quiet. Day before wedding, the bride, a longtime friend, asked me to help babysit one of the groomsmen because he was a nightmare. Asked me, other bridesmaid, DJ, the works, to help cut him off from alcohol before the ceremony, not to allow him to make a speech, keep him from hitting on girls, the works. He was an alcoholic douche with 6 kids and 2 DUIs, but was the absolute best friend of the groom. Day of the wedding, best douche breaks into the bar, gets hammered, has to be dragged down the aisle, gets the florist drunk while they pretty much have sex on the dance floor, and makes what I can only assume to be a speech during the father/daughter dance. The bride was pissed and stressed as well, trying to get things to not be a total shit show. Groom blocked us from keeping him in check, wanted us to just let it go while he did everything the bride asked he not do. It was like a weird purposeful or intentional self-sabotage thing. Douche also broke into the groom's private stash of homemade meat he'd made special just for the wedding, stripped his clothes, and ran through the parking lot hiding in bushes at 11 p.m. Same night the couple texted me asking if I'd want to be their third in their open relationship, which I find out later was mostly the groom's idea. I also found out later they got married pretty quickly because she suddenly needed medical benefits all the while he had been asking for an open relationship for the complete duration of them being together, but she'd only acquiesce if he would marry her as well. Divorce finalized a year and a half later. Edit to add, no, I did not join them, don't shit where you eat. And no, stop asking if I'm X or Y person. Some of y'all have apparently lived through very similar situations apparently, but stop asking if you know me. I may have posted, but I have no intention of doxing myself or the people in this story.